Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Good News Day. We're covering all the positive news and the good things that are happening in the world today on Before Coffee, the comprehensive news of Planet Earth podcast, where we look up our stories 10 to 15 minutes before we've started and we haven't had any caffeine. So let's break out the good news in today's headline. Today on Before Coffee, going vegan? Opt for beans and peas over veggie burgers and plant milks, a study finds.
And brain-controlled bionic limbs are inching closer to reality.
Stalking victims will be able to learn who their perpetrator is under a new crackdown in the UK.
And good news on Good News Day. Giant rats could help sniff out illegally smuggled goods, and we have news about two of our ancient ancestors crossed paths 1.5 million years ago.
This is returning artifacts to Ethiopia in a diplomatic handover, and happy 30th anniversary to the space station.
Woo! And it's National World Trick Shot Day, so get out there with your basketball and start throwing it behind your back. It's December 3rd, 2024 on Before Coffee.
Yes, happy 30th anniversary to PlayStation, which I can't believe that consoles are that old now, but I guess I'm that old, so it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
For our first good news
old?
story is for everyone out there who not only wants to be vegan because they, don't want animals to be harmed, but also they want to save the environment because beans and peas are now better than any kind of veggie burger or plant milk, according to the study. This is on The Independent by Jane Kirby, coming out of the UK. People who want to ditch meat and dairy would be better switching to beans and peas than opting for veggie burgers and plant milks, a University of Oxford study has found. Experts looked at several factors when considering 24 meat and milk alternatives, and including their impact on health, environment, and their cost. They found that natural plant-based foods such as peas, soybeans, and beans performed best across all domains. In comparison, processed foods such as veggie burgers, meat replacements tofu and tempeh, and plant milks were associated with fewer climate benefits and greater costs than unprocessed foods, though they were still better than animal products. So, if you can't find any, I'm sure you can find, let's be honest, beans, peas, soybeans, they're all over the place. They're in cans, in jars, for years to come. They're all over the place. Yeah. But it really is not that hard to switch to them, unless you really miss tasting a burger, I guess. But that's all in the seasoning, really. Just if you season things correctly, your brain will be tricked into thinking that you're eating meat. That's what they do with those cauliflower chicken. They season it exactly like you would season chicken. And then it's like, oh, it tastes like chicken. I mean, to be fair, everything tastes like chicken, which is nothing.
Yeah, you can't really fool your brain that much.
Chicken doesn't have any flavor, really. It's all in the seasoning you put in it.
Right.
Bottom of the list was lab-grown meat, which is not yet sold.
Fat is flavor, man.
Sorry?
I said fat is flavor.
Yeah. Bottom of the list was lab-grown meat, which is not yet sold in the UK for human consumption. Writing in the journal Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, PNAS, researchers from Oxford and University College London calculated that replacing all meat or dairy in high-income countries with the same calories for meat or milk alternatives could cut early death up by 5% to 6%. Among the meat alternatives, the largest reductions were for peas, 6.1%, followed by tempeh, beans, and soybeans, 5.1% to 5.7%. So it's not that, the difference isn't that big. I mean, depending how you feel, I guess. How much your early death is. 5% of cutting your early death. I don't know what that means. Like, oh, instead of dying at 51, I died at 49.5 or something. I don't know.
Or maybe you just have a stroke and die 10 years later.
Yeah, maybe. Veggie burgers and tofu were at 4% cutting your early death. And veggie sausages and veggie bacon were at 3% to 3.6%. Probably saving you from the high cholesterol and all that stuff. Or your filled up blood vessels in your heart. Among the milk alternatives, the largest reductions were for soybeans, 5.2%, followed by almond milk. Most of the changes in chance of death were linked to increase in fiber, 44%, which is good for the health, followed by reductions in areas such as bad cholesterol, as well as increases in healthy fats and the mineral potassium. I agree. I think fiber is kind of like oil for your body. You need that so that the engine keeps clear and you know, everything's being run efficiently. So fiber is definitely good for you. Researchers said that if
your body does nothing with fiber but pass it on through.
Exactly. Researchers said that if all calories from meat or dairy were replaced with alternatives, then people tended to have a lower fat diet and more fiber. On the climate, experts said that livestock sector is responsible for the majority of all food-related greenhouse gas emissions, for about 20% of greenhouse gas emissions overall. And that, I think that also includes them transporting stuff. So, you know, transporting meat to the factory or meat to, you know, stores,
the slaughter,
or just livestock in general, transporting them. All of that ends up being a huge cost on greenhouse emissions. Without dietary changes towards more plant-based diets, the environmental impacts of the food system are projected to pose serious challenges for efforts aimed at keeping global warming to below 2 Celsius, and could exceed other key planetary boundaries that attempt to define safe operating space for humanity on a stable Earth system, they said. They added, our findings suggest that unprocessed plant-based foods such as soybeans, peas, and beans are best suited for replacing meat and dairy in high-income countries and performed well on all dimensions. In comparison, processed plant-based foods such as veggie burgers and plant mix were associated with less climate benefits and greater cost than unprocessed foods, but still offered substantial environmental health and nutritional benefits compared to animal-source foods. Tim concluded that choosing legumes over meat and milk would reduce nutritional imbalances in high-income countries like the UK by half, premature death, in particular from diet-related diseases, by a tenth, and the environmental impact of diets by more than half, and costs by more than a third. That's a lot. All right, everyone, we're passing a new mandate. Everyone must eat beans. You're not having enough beans on toast. More beans on toast. For a healthy UK, Dr. Marco Springman from the Environmental Change Institute at Oxford, who led the study, said, reducing meat and dairy in high-income countries is essential for limiting climate change, biodiversity loss, and improving health. Our study shows that a range of foods and food products exist that would have multiple benefits when replacing meat and dairy in current diets. Dr. Spingman said the surprising runner-up to beans and peas was tempeh. I love tempeh. Oh, it is a traditional Indonesian food, which is why I've eaten it a lot, because I basically live in an Indo-Dutch household, even though, and I grew up with Indonesians, so love eating some tempeh. It's fermented soybeans, which retains many of the nutritional properties of soybeans without much processing or additives. Yes, your secret health food, which I'm sure a lot of people already know, is that fermented food. Kombucha, sauerkraut, what's the Korean one? I just forgot the name of right now. But also
kimchi.
Kimchi. Fermented foods are actually the secret power food. People were saying it's blueberries, but it's actually just fermented everything. Just ferment it and it's suddenly healthier for you because it kills all those extra sugars. Yeah. This, and the relatively low cost, gave it an edge over the processed alternatives such as veggie burgers, he said. The researchers said that at current technologies, lab-grown meat emissions can be as high as those of beef burgers, up to 40,000 times its cost and just as bad for your health. Dr. Springman added, public investment in both lab-grown meat and ultra-processed burger patties look like tough sells when considering their relative impacts and available alternatives. Yeah, just make a burger out of mushrooms, dude. Trust me, it'll work. I like how a bunch of people in the comments are like, I don't care, I'm gonna eat meat. Okay, well, you didn't miss the entire point of the article. The article is just saying it's healthier for you, it saves the environment, and it costs less. Be there, you don't have to pay so much. $40 for 3 burgers, this is ridiculous. Well, go buy some beans then, if you're gonna complain about how expensive it is. Yeah. But of course, the comments are just full of a bunch of people hating on vegans because, that's different than me, I don't like it, they suck.
What the comments in the article?
Yeah, the comments on the article. I don't hate vegans. I'm not a vegan myself. But I do eat locally, so that's how I counter that argument. It's like, oh, you're ruining the environment by eating meat. Like, I'm literally eating the local cow down the street by the local farmer, you know?
Right.
Not the industrial farmer who has 50 cows in his freaking pen and, you know, feeds them only corn meal or whatever. This is like the local grass-fed cow, okay? That's what I'm eating. Don't worry about me. That's me. That's the environment.
Free-range
and that's
cows, too.
your local
They're free-range
or
cows.
your recent vegan news.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, exactly. And on to your good news story.
Okay. It's 11 to 13 minutes here, but I'll try to speed it up. This is from sciencenews.org. Science news. I almost said that like Christopher Walken, didn't I? Anyway, science news. It's science. Brain-controlled bionic limbs are inching closer to reality. This is by Simon Macon. This is a couple months old, but it's from a magazine, so give us a break, right? The word bionic conjures up sci-fi visions of humans enhanced to superhuman levels. It's true that engineering advances such as better motors and batteries, together with modern computing, mean that the required mechanical and electronic systems are no longer a barrier to advanced prosthesis, but the field has struggled to integrate these powerful machines into the human body, or with the human body. That is starting to change. A recent trial tested one new integration technique which involves surgically reconstructing muscle pairs that give recipients a sense of the position and movement of the bionic limb. Signals from those muscles control robotic joints, so the prosthesis is fully under control of the user's brain. The system enabled the people with below-knee amputations to walk more naturally and better navigate slopes, stairs, and obstacles, researchers reported in July's Nature Medicine. Engineers have typically viewed biology as a fixed limitation, and there was my scroller went nuts. Engineers have typically viewed biology as a fixed limitation to be engineered around, said bioengineer Tyler Seitz, who helped develop the technique several years ago while at MIT. But if we look at the body as part of the system to be engineered in parallel with the machine, the two will be able to interact better. That view is driving a wave of techniques that re-engineer the body to better integrate with the machine. Seitz, now at UCLA, calls such techniques anatomics to distinguish them from traditional bionics. The issue we were tackling wasn't an engineering problem, he says. The way the body has been manipulated during the amputation wasn't leaving it in a position to be able to control the limbs we were creating. In the anatomics approach, bones are exploited to provide stable anchors, nerves are rerouted to create control signals for bionic limbs or transmit sensory feedback. Muscles are co-opted as biological amplifiers or grafted into place to provide more signal sources. These techniques all improve the connection and communication between a robotic limb and the human nervous system, enhancing what bionic prostheses are capable of. Anatomics-based devices have been slow to make their way out of labs and into the commercial and clinical worlds, but some say the field is edging closer to that sci-fi vision of seamlessly integrated, brain-controlled bionic limbs, especially as more advances lie around the corner. Here's a closer look at how researchers are aiming to marry body and machine. Reconstructing muscles. Proprioception, the body's awareness of itself in space, is a tricky sense to restore, but it's important for movement, especially walking. Muscles send signals to our brain about where our body is, how it is moving, and what forces it encounters. These signals are generated mainly by coupled muscles called agonist-antagonist pairs, where one contracts as the other stretches. In a traditional amputation, this important feedback is discarded, but the technique is reported in July's study known as agonist-antagonist myoneural interface, or AMI, surgically reconstructs these push-pull pairs and uses the signals they generate to control prosthetic joints. The procedure enables the recipients to feel their prosthetic limb. When the prosthesis moves, the person actually feels that movement as a natural proprioceptive sensation, says MIT bionicist Hugh Herr. His name is Hugh Herr, who developed the technique alongside Seitz and the team surgeon Matthew Carty. The recent study was part of a clinical trial that Herr and colleagues are conducting, which tested the technique on 14 people below the knee amputation. 7 participants had undergone the AMI procedure, while the others had standard amputations. Oh, those poor guys that had the standard ones, man. I want to be in the test group. Damn it. Recipients of the AMI-based system increased their walking speed by 40% from 1.2 meters per second to 1.78 meters per second. The researchers found a rate comparable to that of people without amputation. Another thing it does is extending bones. Most common complaints from prosthetic users involve pain and discomfort. The major source of discomfort is the attachment point. Many of the problems with prosthetic usage are related to the socket, said bioengineer Cindy Chestack of the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Squishy flesh is poorly suited to transferring loads to the part of the body built for the job, the bones. The resulting strain can cause tissue damage and invariably discomfort, sometimes leading users to abandon their device. A technique called osseointegration exploits that fact that certain metals bond with bone. A titanium bolt inserted into a skeleton anchors the prosthesis in place, providing greater strength, stability, and comfort. There's a reason we have skeletons, says Chestic. The procedure was first carried out in 1990, but didn't become widely accepted and clinically available until the past decade. One implant system called Oprah received without an H at the end, received approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in 2020. The main drawback is that the titanium bolt must go through the skin, creating a permanent hole that carries infection risk. Other than the infection risk, osteointegration is better in all ways, Chestek said. Also, rerouting nerves is another technique. Bionicists have long sought to tap the body's nerves to create prostheses that communicate with the brain, but early efforts were frustrating, mainly because the signals that nerves carry are very weak. People tried for decades to get meaningful signals from putting a wire inside a nerve. To this day, it's nearly impossible outside of a controlled lab setting. Modern bionic prostheses communicate mostly with muscles instead. When activated by a nerve, muscles emit much larger electrical signals, which can be picked up by electrodes on the skin, which then control the prosthetic limb. But nerves that previously operated parts of the missing limb and could similarly efficiently operate the artificial limb don't usually end in muscles. They go nowhere, which creates neuromas, bulbs that nerve ends whose electrical sparking causes pain. A procedure called targeting muscle reinnervation, or TMR, solves this problem. A surgeon strips muscles of their native nerves and reroutes severed nerves to a freshly cleared ground. Rerouted nerves grow into the muscles over time, which act as amplifiers, creating sources of required control signals. You turn a nerve recording problem into a muscle recording problem, Chesik said. Muscle recording is easy. The procedure also treats neuroma pain, a purpose for which it is often carried out. A drawback is that TMR cannibalizes existing muscles, limiting the number of signals that can be created. You run out of real estate pretty quickly, Chestek said. This is especially important for amputations above the knee and elbow, where there are fewer remaining muscles and more prosthetic joints to control. A new technique known as regenerative peripheral nerve interface, or RPNI surgically inserts small muscle grafts taken from elsewhere and rerouted nerves to those instead. Surgeons can dissect these nerve bundles into constituent fibers that capitalize on the newly grafted targets, allowing researchers to create as many signals as they need. The small size of the muscle grafts makes it difficult to pick up signals from them using surface electrodes, though. You can't record electrical signals from 3-centimeter piece of muscle through the skin very easily, Chestak said. You have to use implanted electrodes. This is more invasive and implants face regulatory hurdles, but implanted electrodes produce higher quality signals. They just need to be accessed somehow, as running wires through the skin is not a viable outside laboratory studies. Some researchers are working on the wireless systems, but another solution to combine RPNIs with osseointegration. In this setup, wires between implanted electrodes and the prosthesis simply run through the titanium bolt. A study published last year described the above-the-elbow bionic arm using this approach as enabled the recipient to control every finger on his robotic hand, which is awesome. Rebuilding bodies. UCLA, let's do that again. At his UCLA, we're almost done. At his UCLA anatomics lab, Seitz said, I've got 9 or 10 active collaborations with surgeons on different projects. Here, he and his team use cadavers to test and gather data. We'll mount cadaver limbs to a manipulator arm and evaluate the systems we're developing to make sure they work as intended, the site said. It is the backbone of what we do. One of the projects under development is a new attachment method that avoids the permanent hole that comes with osseointegration. Instead of a titanium bolt, there's a piece of steel in the limb and electromagnet in the socket of the prosthetic. The magnet holds the socket into the limb, and then you can control how much attractive force there is by changing the current through the electromagnet. The socket does not have to bear loads. The magnetic force does the job, changing from moment to moment according to the requirements, such as walking versus standing. At MIT, Hare is also working on a new advance. The recent trial of AMI-based bionic legs used electrodes on the skin to shepherd signals from muscles to prosthetic joints, but surface electrodes have drawbacks, such as movement causing such signal distortions. The new technique, called magnetomicrometry involves placing magnet spheres inside the muscles and monitoring their movement with magnometers. There you go, magnemeters. There you go. With these magnets, he says, we can measure what we care about. We can measure what we care about and use it to directly control the bionic prosthesis. A commercial product will exist in about 5 years, he says. For her, such advances are personal. Both of his legs were amputated below his knee after a mountain climbing accident 42 years ago. And mountain climbing is dangerous. He is thinking of upgrading to an AMI-based bionic leg prosthesis in the coming years. Once these techniques are perfected, he predicts a leap forward. Maybe a literal leap, right? Because they'll have legs. Anyway, when you marry surgical techniques like AMI and RPNI with something like magnet micrometry, big long word, we believe it's going to be game over, Her says. We believe there's going to be a Hollywood version of the brain-controlled robotic limbs. An added benefit to restoring proprioception alongside other kinds of sensory feedback, such as touch, is that it makes recipients feel more like a prosthetic as part of themselves. The goal in this field is when we do robotic reconstruction, the person says, "Oh my God, you've given me my body back," Her says. Instead of a robotic tool, we give them the whole limb back. The field is very close to that goal. All right, there's your article. As lengthy as it was, packed with information. Back to you.
Very cool. And very good news. Well, good news. I don't know if it's very good news.
Excellent news.
Excellent news. All right. Let's talk about stalking and how people who do stalk people are now going to lose their anonymity in the UK due to this new crackdown. This is by Maya Oppenheim, on the independent. Courts will be able to hand out protection orders even when individuals have been acquitted if sufficient evidence exists to indicate they pose a risk. Stalking victims will be able to learn their perpetrator's identity more quickly under a new measure unveiled by the government. Perpetrators will be subject to tougher restraining order system, as new policies make it easier for victims to obtain stalking protection orders to stop offenders from pursuing and harassing them. Yes, this is a common problem for especially women. I'm sure men get stalked too. There's a lot of horror movies about that actually. But women, commonly it's women who are getting stalked. And I know at least in the US, you have to really, there's plenty of women who've been murdered after going to the police and going, hey, I'm being stalked. Can you help me? And they're like, oh, when they actually do something to you, then we'll help you. What do you mean?
Yeah.
By the time they do something to me, I'll be dead.
Too late.
And that's what happens. Or they get, attacked in their own home. There's a guy who keeps coming to my house, knocking my door. Well, has he entered your property? No. Okay, well, we can't do anything. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper will introduce the Right to Know statutory guidance to enable police officers to disclose an online stalker's identity at the earliest chance. As soon as they find out who it is, you can find out who it is. Impetuous for this measure stems from an ex-Coronation Street actor Nicola Thorpe's own stalking ordeal, with the Home Office saying the police refused to disclose the identity of a perpetrator even after he was arrested. Why are we protecting criminals? Yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing that happens in Japan as well. Somebody will be arrested and they'll protect the criminal's identity. You have the right to your own privacy to the largest degree. Even as a criminal who's murdered a bunch of people, you still have privacy. Miss Thorpe only learned the identity of her stalker once in court, even though he once said he got so close to Nicola on a train that he was able to smell her. Not creepy at all. For anybody who's like, how do I know I'm being a creep? There. That's right there. Saying anything like that. She was subjected to a relentless slew of violent misogynistic messages, with the man setting up early 30 social media accounts to send these. Wow. I have 5 social media accounts, not too much. This guy had 30. Another example of how you might be creepy if you're making more than 3 social media accounts. You have one for your private life, you have one for your public life, you have one for maybe a specific obsession you have. You're like, oh, this is my Pokemon account or whatever. That's it, okay? You do not need 30. The man who dubbed himself the Grim Reaper because he didn't think he was creepy enough already in some of his messages to the actor is serving a 30-month prison sentence with a lifetime restraining order. Nicola Thorpe specifically. I wish it was a lifetime restraining order against humanity, because everyone needs to stay away from this guy. 30 accounts! New measures launched by the Home Office today, on the 3rd of December, will make stalking protection orders more accessible. Under the current system, orders can only be enforced when an offender is convicted and protection order was enforced prior to the trial. So if you already had a restraining order, you can now know who the person is stalking you. But if you didn't have a restraining order and they're stalking you, they have protections not be shared. But with the raft of new measures in place, courts will be able to administer protection orders after they have been convicted in instances when there is no order before the trial, and also implement orders on individuals who have been acquitted if sufficient evidence indicates they pose a risk. Such orders can block perpetrators from contacting their victims or going in a certain vicinity of them, as well as forcing them to attend schemes which aim to tackle their behavior. Yeah, see, the thing is, if you're online stalker, if you don't know who they are, they could be near you at any time. You can't enforce an order if you don't even know who they are. Yeah, any of these people could be stalking me. I don't know. I guess I just have to live in fear.
Right.
Such orders. Oh wait, sorry, we did that one.
Yeah.
Too often, I hear from victims facing relentless, terrifying behavior from stalkers.
Healthy relationship.
Only for the. Sorry.
I said that's a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Only for the police or Crown Prosecution Services to downgrade it to lesser offense, such as malicious communications or harassment. He's just harassing you. He literally is threatening to cut all my fingers off. That's not harassment, that's a threat. Ms. Cooper said, stalking is a horrendous crime. For far too long, victims of stalking have been subject to debilitating and vicious abuse at the hands of stalkers who use any means necessary to monitor and control their victims' lives. Let's be clear, we will use every tool available to us to give more power to victims and take it away from the hands of their abusers. New message are a key element of Labor's cross-government mission to have violence against women and girls in a decade, the Home Secretary said. Ms. Thorpe added, for too long, stalking victims have been at the mercy of not only of their stalker, but of the justice system that failed to protect them. These new measures will empower victims to regain some much-needed control of their lives and police to bring abusers to justice. The government will also undertake a review of stalking legislation to decide if the law needs to be overhauled to support police to improve how they handle stalking cases. On top of this, the new measures will define stalking in statutory guidance and establish a legal framework that helps services such as police, healthcare, and education to join forces to tackle stalking. Jess Phillips, Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, said, as a victim of stalking myself, I know just how terrifying it can be to be a subject to such controlling behavior. Today, we are announcing 6 fresh measures which will help people go about their lives with the confidence that the person stalking them is being dealt with robustly and that more protections are in place to help them. London's Independent Victims Commissioner Claire Waxman OBE said, too often I hear from victims facing relentless, terrifying behavior from stalkers, only for the police of the old Crown Prosecution Service to downgrade it to a lesser offense. It is clear that current stalking laws are failing to protect victims, and I urge the government to now proceed swiftly their review in this area. Hooray! More people being protected by from stalking. Yes, that. In the comments, somebody did say, we know someone is trying to harm you, but we can't tell you who it is. It's just bonkers, and I agree. This guy wants to kill you, but we're not going to tell you who it is. Hopefully he doesn't find out where you work and sit at the table you serve at as a waitress. Commonly, a lot of these service jobs do suffer from stalking because people think when you're being nice to them, because it's your job to be nice to them, oh, she likes me. She wants to date me. Maybe I can get lucky. No, she just wants you to give her money in her tip, and that's it, okay? That's why she's being nice to you. Don't get it twisted. And I'm sorry that this has to be... Some people get angry at that, too. Wait, she's only being nice to me because it's her job?
USA tips,
Yes. Surprise. Welcome to reality. I don't know. Some of these people do need to get whacked on the head with some reality. But there you go. Good news in the UK for robust protections against stalking. And hopefully they can make more... robust, I guess. They can I like using that word, robust. They can make the protections more and more protecting
robust
for victims and less protecting for the people who are doing the victimizing. That's my story. On to yours.
Okay. Sometimes for good news, well, stalkers are terrible. They have low self-esteem, right? Usually, right? They have trouble expressing real emotions, and they have trouble distinguishing between reality and fake. Those 3 common things. You got yourself a stalker.
Yep.
Anyway, we're going to go back 1.5 million years for some good news, but it's recent. It's a recent discovery because we found some footprints. And this is from another science journal. Which one is this? This is nature.com. Was perusing science journals again. Perusing means to look at and not completely read, I believe. I'm probably using that wrong. Anyway, this is written by Miriam Native, and this is remarkably preserved footprints of Homo erectus and Paranthropus boci offer direct evidence that extinct hominins coexisted. Oh yes. Some 1.5 million years ago, two ancient species crossed paths on a lake shore in Kenya. Their footprints in the mud were frozen in time and lay discovered until 2021. And we're going to have to It says 4 to 5 minutes, but there's no article with it. So there's your article. That's crazy. That's it. That's the article. It says 4 to 5 minutes. There's nothing to read. All right, here we go.
You found it.
That's all it says. Yeah, right. Footprints made were found side by side in a cave in Kenya. There's your story, man. Sorry about that. That was a real dud. Lots of links, but they're like 20 minutes long. And I'm not going to read an hour worth of articles. We'll move on to the next one. This is from sciencenews.org. Giant rats. This is, I promise.
Here we go. Some giant rats. I love some giant rats.
Giant rats. We love us some rats. I love rats in all varieties. My favorite is tree rats, which some people call them squirrels. I call them tree rats. Giant rats could help sniff out illegally smuggled goods. This is from Sophie Hatley from sciencenews.org. Rodents learn to detect elephant ivory and other goods from at-risk species. A new kind of Border Patrol agent could soon start work in African ports, sniffing out illegal goods that are smuggled across country lines. They're rats, and they wear tiny red vests. African giant pouch rats have been trained to identify pangolin scales, elephant ivory, and other items from at-risk species. Researchers could report October 30th on Frontiers in Conservation Scientists. The animals could soon play a part in deterring the international wildlife trade. Wildlife smugglers are disrupting the biodiversity on the ground by poaching specific species, says Isabel Schott, a behavioral ecologist who helped train rats in Morogoro, Tanzania, with Apapo, a nonprofit that deploys scent detection animals. It's very brutal. Poachers might hack horns off of living rhinos or leave dead elephants to rot in the forest floor. Some ports employ canines to detect illegally smuggled goods, but the African poached rats also have potential. The creatures have incredible sense of smell, plus they are agile and relatively inexpensive to care for. The Apapo-trained rats can sniff out landmines and detect tuberculosis in mucus samples.
Yeah, they're great. I wanted one when I had all those pet rats. I was like, I want one of these. It's like a dog. It's like a little chihuahua rat. It's huge.
Then you can ride it to work.
I can find people's tuberculosis.
Humans have a fear of rats. I think it's from movies. Anyway, Schott's team taught 11 rat trainees how to differentiate between odors, including the targeted ones from wildlife species, as well as other benign scents. Their laboratory was a giant box outfitted with 10 small chambers where the researchers placed different samples. By rewarding the rats when they held their nose for 3 seconds above the target door, researchers taught the rats to signal and get snacks. The rats learned to signal for pangolin scales, rhino horn, elephant tusk, and African blackwood, which is popular for use in musical instruments. Eventually, the 8 rats that completed the project could distinguish the 4 scents from 146 other odors commonly used by smugglers to mask and hide their goods, like cardboard, electric cables, and synthetic wigs. Still, training the rats in the lab to detect scents is only the beginning. Trainees have since ventured into mock warehouses, and some have deployed to real ports, says Schott, who is now with the Okenios Foundation in Darmstadt, Germany. While new wildlife detectives are being trained, some of the original cohort are now enjoying their golden years, pampered with fruits, veggies, and sun-dried fish. They've got a whole retirement colony of Apapo where they can just live out their days. All right, a giant rat retirement colony. I wonder if they have little tiny golf carts. Anyway, there's your story for today. Tomorrow we're going to have a story about rats driving, so that was only half in joke. So rats can drive cars. Go rats, go rats, go rats, go. Back to you.
For rats. as a rat lover myself. Okay, from rats, let's talk about the France returning artifacts to Ethiopia. I love a good artifact returning story because they belong to Ethiopia. And if they want to lend them to France, that's fine. But if they just got stolen and then never returned, that's different, okay? This is from Euronews by just Euronews. Euronews. French officials were keen to emphasize that the return of the objects, part of a larger haul of 3,000, was a diplomatic handover rather than a restitution. Why? Why? Why are they... Oh no, it's not a restitution. Okay, why not? Because it'll make us feel bad, because that indicates we stole them. It can't restitute it if we didn't steal it, right guys? France has returned 3 ancient artifacts to Ethiopia dating back between 1 and 2 million years. The items, which include 2 prehistoric stone axes and a stone cutter, were handed over by French Foreign Minister Jean-Noel Barrot to Ethiopia's Tourism Minister Salam Witkasa in a symbolic ceremony at the National Museum of Ethiopia last week. The 3 artifacts are part of a collection of around 3,500 items stored at the French embassy in the Ethiopian capital. Okay, so they're in Ethiopia right now, but they're at the French embassy, so France owns them. Addis Ababa, though it's not known if other artifacts are due to return to the Ethiopian government. Laurent Serrano, cultural advisor at the French embassy in Ethiopia, told Arab News that the move was a handover, not a restitution. In these objects, we have been part of the French public collections. Okay, whatever. These artifacts, which date back 1 and 2 million years, were found during excavations carried out several decades at a site near Ethiopian capital. What, that was ran by a Frenchman, so they own it now? Serrano explained. Barrot also unveiled a €7 million initiative called Sustainable Heritage in Ethiopia, aimed at preserving and restoring Ethiopia's historic sites. One of the prominent projects includes the renovation of 12th and 13th century cave churches of Lalibela, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which came under control of rebel forces in Ethiopia's Tigray region in 2021. On a wider question of restitution, however, frustration remains. Despite French President Emmanuel Macron's 2017 announcement to return African heritage to the continent, according to Art News, there has been growing exasperation over the lack of progress in the years since. The date has yet to be set for the debate of a bill addressing the return of colonial era artifacts in the French National Assembly. No! This is part of our history, us colonizing places. Yes, that's why it's ours, says the French.
That's right.
In some anniversary celebratory news, it's the 30th anniversary of the PlayStation, a game console that made games cool, according to Keith Stewart here on The Guardian. If you were an obsessive video game fan in the summer of 1994, I wasn't alive. Well, actually, I was alive. I was barely alive in 1994. You remember where you were when Edge Magazine's August issue dropped. By then, Sony had already announced its intention to develop the PlayStation console the previous October, but it was the cover feature in the world's most forward-looking game publication that really blew open the possibilities of the machine. As well as listing its specifications in full, Edge secured enthusiastic statements from support from Capcom, Namco, and Konami, famous game developers from Japan. One breathless developer told the mag, "It's going to revolutionize the way computers are at the moment." Suddenly, the whole structure of the console game business was being threatened. All it needed was a push. Sony's entry into the video game industry has become the stuff of legend, and probably one day the stuff of passable Netflix movie. In the late 1980s, the company was keen to get a foothold in increasingly profitable business after the failure of its MSX games computer. So when the chance came up to build a CD-ROM drive, wow, fancy new technology! Instead of cartridges, people were using cartridges and floppy disks before that. CD-ROM drive for the soon-to-be-released Super Nintendo console, Sony leapt at it. In a background, however, Sony's engineering genius Ken Kutaragi was also designing a standalone system, the PlayStation, capable of playing SNES games as well as a new CD format that Sony itself would control. And that's where everything went downhill, man. You cannot play this in your DVD! It's for Sony consoles. You must have oh no, not encryption. CD encryption, no! Nintendo sensed the threat to its hegemony. Consequently, when Sony announced the PlayStation at the giant 1991 Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago, Nintendo immediately revealed it was in fact canceling the deal and would instead partner with Philips to produce its SNES-based CD add-on. Wow, salty! You guys are also making a thing! Ugh. Well, we're not gonna hire anymore. Your contract's canceled. Sony was left shocked and humiliated, the jilted bride at the tech industry's grand cathedral. Various theories about Nintendo's motives have been put forward. You mean how they've always been petty bitches since the beginning of time? You know, I love the game Nintendo makes, but the company, I'm just saying, the company Nintendo is terrible. They're petty. They used to take down videos of their video games from YouTube, you know, free advertising, and they'd be like, "You played our Pokemon game. Stop sharing. I want people to buy the game and play the game and see the no footage sharing allowed. No one's allowed to see anything from our games. Okay, you have to buy it and play it."
That's crazy.
It was a wild
insane.
time on YouTube.
I don't know how you can get away with that.
I think they still can get you sometimes, especially if you use Nintendo Music. They're super. Yeah, they're just petty. They're just petty. You know, very petty. This was a very protective company wrestling back control from an ambitious consumer electronics rival. Whatever really happened, PlayStation was dead. Or was it? Well, no, it wasn't. Instead, a furious Sony scrapped its Nintendo-based tech and Kutaragi began work on a new games machine, codenamed PSX, designed around a powerful 32-bit RISC processor with a built-in coprocessor named the Geometry Transformation Engine, designed to handle the mathematics of fast, detailed, real-time 3D visuals. At this stage in the early 1990s, the company made two crucial decisions. It signed a development deal with arcade legend Namco to produce titles exclusively for the new PSX. Another freaking downhill for gaming, man. I'll say it forever. I hate exclusivity for consoles. I hate that, especially since computers exist, you know. But that's my own.
Well, they've got to make their money, otherwise they go to business, right? You can just easily substitute it.
Yeah, I mean, it made more sense back then to do it because you really could only play video games on consoles. There was some games you could play on computers, but the majority of a lot of games were being played on consoles by the majority of people. Not saying that there weren't people playing computer games on the computer, but consoles were just cheaper than buying an entire computer, and so it got really popular, of course, for your children to just buy a console instead of buying a whole freaking decked out computer so you could play, I don't know, Wolfenstein or whatever. But now these days, computers are way more common. Almost everyone has a computer, so making exclusivity these days for me is just ridiculous. Either way, they had exciting 3D graphic demos and Sony really capitalized on widespread frustration with Sega and Nintendo, which had spent years locking publishers in restrictive and complex licensing deals, but it also seduced coders and artists with a thrilling new tech. By early 1994, it had 250 companies signed up to create games for the machine, battering the meager support accrued by rival multimedia consoles such as the Philips CDI or the 3DO, both famously failed consoles that nobody even remembers. There was a sense of growing momentum. The PlayStation came out, and from 1996, Sony really began to push the PlayStation as a lifestyle accessory rather than just a kid's toy. Sony London's head of marketing, Jeff Glendenning, famously got the console into nightclubs and musical festivals. The huge advertising company, TBWA, was employed to develop a fresh image for the machine as something cool and desirable, culminating in 1999's award-winning Double Life commercial. But more importantly, the console's approachable development environment and Sony's excellent support for third-party studios led to an era of fervid experimentation. That's true. Sony was famous for supporting those third-party Of course, you've got famous games like Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Driver, as well as Ridge Racer and Tekken, and Final Fantasy VII, the acclaimed best Final Fantasy game ever, and Metal Gear Solid. But vitally, the PlayStation also brought an undercurrent of eccentricity and playfulness. From Raw Papa the Rapper to Vib Ribbon to LSD, Dream Emulator. Yeah, there was a lot of crazy games. And of course, Spyro and Croc and Crash Bandicoot, all those, what are they called? Platformers, those platformers. The original PlayStation would go to sell 100 million units over its 10-year lifespan. It broke the monopoly enjoyed by Sega and Nintendo, and it cemented a range of giant gaming franchises that still prosper today. At the time of its launch, there were uncertainty over the CD-ROM format, which was slower to access data than cartridges. But Sony used its expertise with music and movie tech to overcome the obstacles and establish a format as the future of gaming, of industrial design, a sleek gray machine that fitted in beside your TV, and a video recorder in the living room, an innovative joypad, those cute little memory cards, and that startup animation with its swell music. The TV ads made you want one. The launch price, which was £299, compared to Saturn's £399, made it accessible. I don't know what that was in US, but you bought a Sega Saturn. Do you remember how much it cost when you bought it? Or did you just get it as like a...
No.
As somebody just gave it to you as the second.
No, it's probably Christmas in '96 or something like that. I don't know. No idea.
I guess it was probably around 400. Let's go. Pounds and dollars weren't that
I assume it was
back
too
then.
much.
Yeah, too much. Of course, now the PlayStation is almost $1,000. I think like $800. So thanks, inflation. When you look back at the Edge magazine feature, published month before the Japanese launch and followed by many other similar assessments in the gaming press, it already felt as something momentous was happening. The quotes, the specs, the demo screenshots seeming to lift from pages. If the success of the PlayStation wasn't inevitable at that point, it was near as you will ever get in the notoriously unpredictable business of video games. Of course, PlayStation ended up being just like Nintendo with its licensing deals where you can have our game on your console for 2 years until you can release it on PC. So I'm sure it's not terrible. I'm sure they get like a second wind of money, right? Oh, we released it on the PlayStation. Everyone buys the game for the PlayStation. They play it. And then the people who don't have PlayStations, they release it 2 years later and they go, oh yeah, that game I totally forgot about because it was 2 years ago. Now I'm going to buy it. And then the game company makes more money because they get a second round of selling the game to a whole new demographic of people. But there is your celebration of the 30 years of PlayStation coming out as a console, because Sony already existed long before then, but their actual first
Sony. Yeah, right.
Sorry?
No, Sony has an interesting history, but I'll let you finish.
Yeah. Because they were making a lot of things.
Right.
But
I guess you were finished. I don't know. You stopped talking.
That's my story. It's the end. On to this day in history. I don't know what else we say.
Oh, I was going to say Sony. Oh, then again, I was going to say Sony, of course, invented the Betamax, which nobody has ever heard of, but it was a better system than VHS, but it wasn't cheap enough. So people bought the VHS machines, and the VHS tapes, and Betamax basically was designed to schools and stuff. But they recovered a few years later with the invention of the Walkman, which by 1983, cassette tapes had outsold vinyl albums because of the Walkman. So, although
literally
Sony didn't invent the tape that you play in the Walkman, but hey, aftermarket's the way to go. And of course, Sony Music is huge because they're buying everybody's catalogs. They own Bob Dylan's catalog.
Which was what they sold with the PlayStation 3, right? You don't need a Blu-ray player. You can play it on our PlayStation 3, so you can game and watch your Blu-rays. And then that's how they sold PlayStation 3. It's just the Blu-ray function. Because let's be honest, there's no games on the PlayStation 3, okay?
And it's all entertainment. It's all just entertainment for the most part. All it is, right? They own Sony Music, which owns, I guess they own Queen. They don't own Prince's catalog, but they own the publishing rights or distribution rights or whatever, something like that.
Big media conglomerate.
Huge conglomerate. That's the word. That's right. And into the future, they own us all. Big, huge corporations. By the way, I sent you a video.
I've already slotted it in.
We're going to do this day in history. This day in history, December 3rd in the year Let's see. Go out to the bottom. Not to the bottom yet. Okay. This day in 1552, St. Francis Xavier, the leading Roman Catholic missionary of modern times, died of a fever off the coast of China. Trying to turn the Chinese into Catholics. 1721, German composer Johann Sebastian Bach married his second wife, Anna Magdalena Wilken, the daughter of trumpeter at the Weisenfels. Well, happy anniversary to those happy couple. 1818, Illinois was admitted as the 21st state of the United States. On this day, happy, what is it, 100 and, 200 and something, 206, Illinois. In 1854, after hastily constructing a fortification and barricading themselves inside, miners working at the Eureka Goldfield in Victoria, Australia, opened fire on the government forces surrounding the stockade, the culmination of long-standing grievances as part of the Diggers. They call themselves Diggers, not miners, Diggers. 1857, English writer Joseph Conrad, whose notable works included the novel Lord Jim and the novella Heart of Darkness, was born. 1859, 1895, Anna Freud was born. She was the daughter and founder of child psychoanalysis and daughter of course, Sigmund Freud. So she started picking the brains of children. Oh yeah. 1947, Tennessee's Williams, A Streetcar Named Desire, premiered on Broadway, starring Jessica Tandy, Kim Hunter, and Marlon Brando. I bet you didn't know Marlon Brando was on Broadway. The later two appeared in the 1951 film adaptation, A Streetcar Named Desire. 1967, Christian Barnard of South Africa performed the first human heart transplant at Groot Schuur Hospital in Cape Town. Yes, and the guy who was transplanted was done using his heart, right? He was dead. 2000, this day, Gwendolyn Brooks, a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, died. She spoke of the truth of and to the everyday struggles and triumphs of African Americans. She kind of resembles Michelle Obama. And our featured event today, and this is terrible, one of the worst disasters in history. Imagine waking up dead one day because a factory in town was leaking gas. That's right. This day in 1984, gas leak in Bhopal, India. On this day, a gas leak from Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, India, spread over a populated area, resulting ultimately in 15,000 to 20,000 deaths, leaving some 500,000 survivors with chronic medical ailments. And Union Carbide, I looked it up, is no longer, well, eventually they still exist as a company, but they belong to Dow Chemical. So they got swallowed up. So tragic day today. That was 40 years ago today. People woke up dead, having gone to sleep, thinking, that chemical, never even thinking about that chemical plant in town. Why do we have a chemical plant in town, by the way? Why couldn't chemical plants be way, way out in the countryside? Anyway, other birthdays today. Rajendra Prasad, President of India, born in 1884. Jean-Luc Godard, born in 1930, French director. Ozzy Osbourne's birthday today. Ozzy Osbourne, born in 1948. He's turning 76. Yeah.
Wow.
Happy birthday, Ozzy.
He's still going,
and he's still kicking.
Yeah.
The most amazing thing in the world that he's still alive. Even more amazing than Keith Richards. Julianne Moore, born in 1960. Happy birthday, Julianne Moore. And Sean Parker, American entrepreneur, born in 1979. If you don't know what Julianne Moore is, she's an actress. She was in Big Lebowski, among other things. And those are your days, your birthdays. And National Day is World Trick Shot Day. This is basketball, but I guess you can have trick shots in all kinds of sports, golf or pool or whatever. So it's National Trick Shot Day. National Day of Giving. It's National Day of Giving. Last Thursday was Thanksgiving. Today is the first Tuesday after Thanksgiving is called Giving Tuesday. And our last day is National Roof Over Your Head Day. So if you have a roof over your head, that's a good thing because the rain isn't falling in your cereal. So there's your days. Everything for today. All the crap we can throw at you. For December 3rd, 2024, on Before Trick Shots.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that today. I also have to do some catch up on my international days. Because I covered the 29th the 30th, but I didn't cover the 1st and 2nd and 3rd of December because I totally forgot about those.
Oh.
So the 1st of December was the UN's International Observance of AIDS. So showing support for people worldwide against their fight against HIV and AIDS and commemorate those who have died from AIDS, especially during the 1980s. This World AIDS Day was actually founded in 1988. And the first ever Global Health Day. 8 years are left before the 2030 goal to end AIDS completely. So go out there, wear protection, and help end the global danger of AIDS. For December 2nd, which was yesterday, it was the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. As we talked about, I think last week, there's somebody who was enslaving Indonesians. It's still happening today, so let's work together as a community, as a planet, to stop and eradicate slavery, inclooing trafficking in persons and sexual exploitation.
That also is
considered
today.
Slavery.
Human trafficking is what's called now.
The worst forms of child labor and forced marriage are also considered under this day, and forced recruitment of children for use in armed conflict. All those things, get rid of them. Don't even think about doing them. And if you know somebody who wants to do them, punch them in the face. That's what I say. I hate slavery, even in video games.
It hurts like hell.
Yeah, if there's somebody in a video game who's like, I'm a slaver, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna kill this guy. I don't care. I'd support slavery in 0 instances, even in fantasy. Finally, today's international observance, we can catch up with these international observances,
slavery
is the International Day of Disabled Persons. So support and promote the understanding of disability, which goes from things like asthma, like I have, to all the way to debilitating physical illnesses.
Well, it's a good thing we had good news about Bionics today then, right?
As able-bodied people, we should all mobilize to support their dignity, their rights to well-being, and living with disabilities, and increase awareness of gains to be derived from the integration of person with disabilities. Just because they're disabled doesn't mean they can't do anything for society. Not saying they deserve to exist because they can do things for society, but they're not, let's just let people with disabilities exist around us in the world, destroy ableism, and that's our show today. So I hope you guys have a good Tuesday, because it is Good News Tuesday. We will see you tomorrow for Wacky and Weird Wednesday, where we're going to cover wacky and weird stories like that one about the rats driving cars, and I'm sure I have some weird ones in here somewhere as well. So make sure you're subscribed to the Alien Raj channel and turn on those notification bell so you know when we go live and post a video. Like this video if you enjoy learning about all the great things that happened this week, and comment down below what you would do with a giant rat. I'm really obsessed with these giant rats. Okay, what can I say? So if you had a giant rat, what would you do with it? And here is, well, our giant rat themed mic drop moment.
These rats are not the rats that
Here, they're pretty big. Like, look at them. They're big. They're big rats.
And Sorgi rats, so they're native to Morogoro, Tanzania.
Giant poached rats.
All species of rats actually have an incredible sense of smell.
I mean,
but we could harness.
I want one so bad, but it's probably best that I don't have one, because they're doing good work out there. I don't need to be walking my pet rat down the sidewalk. That's not useful for anybody.
Right.
So the idea of this vest is
look at their cute little harnesses.
It's useful. It's useful for your well-being, don't you think?
They're so adorable. Oh my god.
The vest will be emitting a beep, which tells me my rat has found something. Ultimately, it'll even integrate.
God, look, it has a little backpack.
That's linked to a remote.
So we were training rats to detect African blackwood, which when it falls victim to, illegal logging, it's not replenishing quickly. Penguins are very small. They're covered in keratin scales.
Yeah, those are
They
really
look
cool.
like armadillos.
Yeah,
detect.
pangolians.
They're actually
Very
the
cool.
world's most widely trafficked mammal.
The other two species that we worked on were elephant ivory. So elephant
Oh, really?
tusks,
They can smell that.
and rhino horn. So that the
Oh yeah, it was in the article.
Yeah, yeah.
In rhino horn.
Oh,
We
he's
start with
has all the
education
food in his
training,
cheeks.
exposing the rats to the wildlife targets. All
Mm-hmm.
of our rats are reinforced with little food pellets, and then we start introducing non-target items. And this is a step that's called discrimination.
I like how they're going into
in
the
which the rats are now learning
process
not
of
just
this.
the act
Yeah.
of smelling something that gets reinforced, but it's the
That is
odor
not an ivory horn. That's actually dog
of
bones.
Other non-target items such as socks or washing powder, peanuts.
Makes you want to
and
become a
then
rat
the rats
researcher, doesn't it?
reject only
Yeah, it does.
150 different
I want to work with
non-target
these
items,
rats and train them
then
to
detect
find
the wildlife
diseases
targets
and
even when they
mines.
Yeah, the Cambodian ones are detecting mines.
This is a great first step.
Yeah.
Is showing in a lab setting the rats can do this. The next trial that's coming up is actually at the airport in Dar es Salaam. Then we can hope. to see the
Thanks,
rats
all those
operational
researchers, for
next
doing
years.
all that research for the rats and saving the planet
All right.
and people's
Right
lives.
on. Good news. Good news. Good news. We only report good news on Tuesday. Tomorrow we'll be back to the weirdness.
Yeah.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.